People giving into fear has ruined just tons of dreams and tons of happiness.
You were retired race car driver.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
Since I hadn't been on a racetrack in 3.5 years, I was very surprised I maintained my ranking.
John Mauro is a high-performance expert, both on and off the track. As the founder of Mauro Motorsport, he trains drivers to push their limits with precision and confidence. Beyond racing, he's built one of the nation's top workplace safety programs from the ground up, proving that with focus and grit, you can create real impact.
There's things like fast and loud, right? The TV show and the perception of it's fast and it's loud, but that's not the case at all. A lot of these race cars even today have air conditioning in them. You have to be strong in your mind and strong in your will while still being very, very precise.
Can you tell me the story where you had
Barcelona. It was a 24-hour race, endurance race. We had 4 drivers. And so, my friend, how have you been?
Welcome back to the show, Johnny.
Hey, thank you, my friend.
How you been?
You know what? I've got no complaints. You know me. You can't have a good day with a bad attitude.
Last time we talked, you were retired race car driver.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that. What are you up to now?
Well, I am retired.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't my idea. I think right before our last podcast, I had shared that I was just going to go out to the racetrack with one of the Audi engineers just to have fun. I hadn't been in a race car. It's a love of a life. If you know, it's something I just wanted to do. And about halfway through the day, and he was like very lightly saying, don't do this, don't do that. These are your bad habits. Right. Let's do this, let's do that. And then after about 4.5 hours of doing that, I went in and I guess I laid down what we called hot laps. And he leaned into the car when I came into the pits. He says, "Hey man," he says, "when's the last time you was in a race car?" I said, September of 21. He's like, "Are you lying to me?" And I said, "No, why?" He says, "You would have qualified 7th in the last race here."
Oh. How did that make you feel?
I mean, listen, it made me feel good. I was actually very surprised because it's still at the time I'm retired. I hadn't had any fitness or cardio. I hadn't done any hand-eye coordination, what we call button seat kind of things. So I just kind of gripped it and ripped it. And it just made me feel like there's a natural talent there. And that's always something that I'd always feared. Like, it doesn't matter how long I'd raced. Every time I got in the race car, I always felt like, oh my gosh, they're going to figure me out. I'm not supposed to be here. And I don't know if that was one of my driving forces or not. But yeah, it worked.
When you got back onto the racetrack, not in that instance, but after, when you actually started racing in Daytona, how did it feel to be back?
Yeah, we did Daytona. So I went ahead and got my professional licensing again. I was surprised with regard to the professional licensing because I still held an FIA International Bronze licensing category, which is pretty hard to get. And since I hadn't been on a racetrack in 3.5 years, I was very surprised I maintained my ranking. So it only took a few days, believe it or not, to get my licensing back at the professional level. But being back at Daytona was scary. I'm not going to embellish it whatsoever. I was scared. I was really scared. And there was one practice session where it had a steady rain going on. And sure, we had rain tires. But here I am on the Zoba because, you get up on the high banks of Daytona and you're up like this. And I'm in the rain and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Are you kidding me? This is so dangerous. And it's one of the things that I truly love about racing and truly relate to. It's hard. And it makes you face the fears that you have. And fear a lot of times is that cliche, false evidence appearing real.
Right.
Right. And I say that, people giving into fear has ruined just tons of dreams and tons of happiness. And so, there's things that I try to do throughout my life that terrify me, like jumping out of an airplane. I am terrified of heights. Even though I have a helicopter license, I'm terrified of heights. So I go up and I jump out of an airplane every couple of years just because I think it's an irrational fear and I don't want it to control me. So there I was on the high banks of Daytona in the rain. And I told the engineers, I'm not going out, I'm not going out, I'm not going out. And they're like, you're going out. I said, I'm not getting in that car. And they said, you're getting in the car. And sure enough, I did. And I was doing 157 miles an hour. And sometimes you just have to trust that you can get through it. And I think that's something else that people just don't exercise enough of. Trust in yourself to figure it out.
Being in the driver's seat, what do you think is a misconception that people have watching racing? from being in that perspective.
Yeah, yeah. It's to me, I relate to our race car drivers, athletes, right? And I can tell you they're absolutely athletes. Our heart rates get up to about 130, 140.
Wow.
Yeah, we're dripping out, sweating out 6 or 7 pounds of fluid. There's a fitness element to it. There's a cardio and a hand-eye coordination to it. Just like hitting a baseball, if you would, or throwing or catching a football. There's different relative parallels to other sports. And so I think one of the things that is a misconception is that it's easy. I could do that. I was in an Uber not long ago, and the Uber driver said, I could be a good race car driver. And I'm like, no, you can't. Something about driving at a wall at 155 miles an hour, 160 miles an hour, touching the brake just enough to make that right-hand turn and hanging on, it makes your legs shake sometimes.
Well, I'm sure. So thinking of that driver, the Uber driver, do you think everybody's coachable to be able
Oh, yeah. Yes. I coached an 83-year-old man 4 or 5 years ago. He had bought a Porsche, his dream car, 82. And he'd never driven over 100 miles an hour.
Oh, wow.
So I took him to a racetrack, and he was awesome. He was less talking and more listening. And he was just incredible to work with because he wanted to learn. And those people, they're limitless.
Do you think fear or ego are your worst enemies? Which one's worse of an enemy in the racetrack?
I don't think either one's an enemy. I like both my fear and my ego.
All right. I'll give you that one.
I mean, from the ego perspective, there's a quote that's attributed to me that says, I've never tried to win a race. I just don't like it when a car's in front of me.
I like that.
There's a lot of truth to that. I get confounded. Like, why is that driver better than me? Is their car better than mine? No. Are their engineers better than mine? No. Well, he's in front of you because he's a better driver. Well, no, he's not. And I don't know. It just that ego, that healthy ego, helps to drive me forward. Now, I don't ego myself onto other people. I don't knock people down to make me feel better, but I ego myself to raise my performance level.
Now, from an artistic perspective, you've been to a few tracks around the world. What kind of thought process do these track makers, developers have to go through to create these tracks?
Great question. You know what? There's elevation changes. There's what we call on camber, off camber, which is how the road would twist and tilt. You've got the tight radius turns or a sweeping radius turns. Can you fit one car or 3 cars through this turn? Is it a second gear turn or is it a first or third gear turn? Is it a high speed turn? What percentage of the track is going to be full throttle? What percentage of the track is going to be spent on the brakes? How many gear changes are there going to be? In our case, it's paddle shifters. So there's a lot of thought that goes into a racetrack. Now, here's what's funny. It's not just about the performance of the racetrack these days. It's about the noise and the noise abatement of the racetrack. A lot of times there's communities around these racetracks now. And, what used to be out in the country as developed over the course of years. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into the noise abatement of a racetrack, even existing racetracks. And then what coincides with that is the manufacturers making the cars quieter. There's things like fast and loud, right? The TV show and the perception of it's fast and it's loud, but that's not the case at all. And so a lot of these race cars even today have air conditioning in them. But even still, you're still dropping a lot of sweat.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you stay cool, especially let's say Daytona during the summer? How do those drivers stay cool? Because they don't have air conditioning.
No,
it's just added weight.
No, it is added weight, and a lot of times in the past it would take away the performance and the horsepower of the engine, and so honestly, they've got these things called cool suits, but they don't last that long. Some people use vests that have ice packs in them. They don't last that long. No matter what you do, it's not going to last that long. And by the time you sit on grid for 30 to 45 minutes, then you go out and do 1 to 3 laps of warm up to get the tires up. And then, you start the race, it's already hot. What was cool in the car is hot. And so honestly, you just, there's a mental discipline. It's just part of the gig. You have to be strong in your mind and strong in your will while still being very, very precise. So precision, I think, is the name of the game.
I would say definitely, yeah, for sure, precision. In regards to, you do endurance racing. The last one was about 4 hours. You mentioned the heat, the air conditioning, the suits. For some of these races or longer ones, How do you guys go to the bathroom?
There have been more than one or two race car drivers that have peed in the car. You just don't want to be the one behind them.
So you said you have to literally go to the bathroom?
You got to go. You got to go.
Yeah.
And you let it go. I've never had to go to the bathroom in a race car. I had a close call once, but yeah, we were sitting on grid. And again, you got to think of, we're drinking 6 or 7 liters of water a day, with or without electrolyte. That's a lot of liquid. And I'm sitting on grid and we're getting ready to go out on track. And there was a crash, like the last lap of the series before us. And it was going to be like an hour delay, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. And then all of a sudden I had to go. So I'm like unbuckling all my stuff and all my gear, and I'm running to the porta-john. A lot of people taking pictures of me. It's a little mildly embarrassing, but I'm just not one to go to the bathroom in the car. But normally, to answer your question at a scientific level, you're going to sweat it out.
Oh.
So your body processes it. And so, it's the liquid and the fluids that you have in your body that keeps you healthy, right? Well, your body's going to expel it in the form of sweat.
I know you like to tell the story. I can't recall if I asked it last time. I probably did. So I interviewed Johnny about a year and a half ago, one of my first few episodes. Can you tell me the story where you had
Barcelona, 2019. It was a 24-hour race, endurance race. We had 4 drivers, and it was my second time in the car, my second stint in the car. I opened the race at the green flag, and I did a double stint, which means I drove about 3 hours. And then I was out of the car, and the race started at 1 p.m. I was out of the car until about 9:30 that night. I got back into the car, and when I got in the car, I think we were 9th. And, I quickly got us up to 5th, and I'm chasing down 4th. And at the time, I was the fastest car on the track. I was in a Porsche 991.1 car. And I'm going into turn 3 at Barcelona, which is a long sweeping right-hander. And all of a sudden, my body says, hey, you're going to throw up. And my brain said, yeah, no, you're not. And my body's like, hey, you're going to throw up. And my brain's like, no, you're not. And my body's like, you're going to. So I was literally throwing up in the car through turn 3. And then I was dry heaving through turn 5 and just losing a lot of grip, a lot of ground to the cars in front of me. I was no longer the fastest car on the track, but by the time we got to turn 10 or 13, I realized I still had a job to do. The car, my competitors, the crew back in the pits, nobody cared that I was throwing up or not feeling well in the car. I had a job to do. I was brought there to do a job. And so it's a moment where you have to get inside yourself to bring a discipline back to the precision of which you have to perform. And so I couldn't see. That was the other thing is I raced with my helmet up a little bit and just the visor cracked a little bit. So when I was expelling all this liquid from my body, it went through my helmet into my visor, and the fumes, quite frankly, were making me not be able to see that well.
Right.
And so we were a TV car that day. And so when you're a TV car, they put a camera on the passenger side A-pillar so they can shoot in on you. And here's what people don't realize. There's a media center, a control center where every in-car camera is live on a big screen TV, and the producer just chooses what they want to pick.
Right.
But your race directors are watching that same feed. And it was just completely instinctual for me. But, we're coming down the front straight, which is about 173 miles an hour at that track. I'm driving with my knee, changing gears with my hand, while wiping the vomit off my face. We did have a drink bottle that day, and I was hitting the drink button still while driving my knee, only reaching to the steering wheel to change gears on the upshift, just trying to get the caustic fumes out of my face, and so I could get back to doing my job.
How much instinct or muscle memory did that take to do that?
Again, great question. That's why I love doing these interviews with you. You go deep on your questions. You obviously do your research about what it takes. You go beyond the surface. That second lap, so the first lap I was vomiting. The second lap, I'm going down the front stretch just to try to get the caustic fumes out of my eyes. I couldn't really see the track. Everything was still blurry for me. And remember, this is at sunset too.
Right.
And so, there's so much about every racetrack that has a rhythm to it. It's like a dance. And it's like you're holding onto the racetrack and you're sweeping through this turn and bringing in the throttle here, and you're being violent on the brake there. And so, there's an exercise that a lot of race car drivers will do, and it's very popular on the internet right now, where they tell a race car driver to close their eyes, and they'll play the screen on the TV behind them, and they'll ask you to narrate the lap, and really good race car drivers will do it within a half a second.
Wow.
And it's very impressive. But to your point, I couldn't find the rhythm, so I got behind a competitor that I know. I know him. I know his habits. I know his car. We were equally, comparative as far as our balance of performance. And I followed him. I followed him for 2 laps until I could get until I could get myself back together in a race car. And then it's go time. Now it's go time. I'm usually not very chatty on a radio unless somebody makes me mad. And then I'm like pushing the volume or pushing the communicate button. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, okay, here we go. I start trash talking again myself to my team. And I remember very distinctly getting back on that radio button. I said, hey, listen, it's go time. And you put the team in the car with you. It's no different than any other relationship that you would have with a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a daughter, anything. Any relationship is still a ship, right? A relationship. And it's more than who you are. You do things, or I do things greater when I do them for other people than when I do for myself. So I put the entire team in that car with me. The team was headquartered in Brussels, Belgium, and here we are in Barcelona. That takes time and money.
Right.
Takes a lot of effort. And again, people think it's a me moment, but it's not. It's a we moment, very much.
There's a team behind everything, and
yeah,
everybody's got a role. From the person that's going to change your tires, their role is critical, because if you don't have that on right, you can't race.
Yeah.
And that's a fascinating story. This is your first time coming to imaging. What has been your perspective on this expo from your eyes?
Yeah. You know what? Here's what I like about places and things like this. Whenever you can be around people that are exhibiting their passion, that's a good crowd to be around. And again, racetracks are tight-knit families because we all have a similar passion, right? And it could be, I met some very famous photographers here this week, and from around the world. I think they said they've got 70,000 participants or entrants in the specialty, but they've got 56 countries that are represented or something like that.
It's pretty massive.
It is, and I've met some very famous photographers and whatnot, and to be around people with passion, I think is just a beautiful thing. And again, you could be amongst some of the best in the world, or you could be around people that are newbies. I was just listening to a guy just a minute ago when I was walking in, and he had just retired. He'd always wanted to be a photographer. And so here he is following his passion because he just retired, and now he's got time on his hands to be able to do this. And where else can you go, again, to be some of the best in your field to get advice from them? So it's very accessible. And this is a great event. This is a great event. And here's the other thing, and this just came into my mind right now. The guy that just retired, he's at the show for the first time, versus a guy like you introduced me to a guy the other day from Brazil,
right?
Curitiba, super nice guy. Again, leads with passion, but he's very approachable. And in this moment of just thinking, is here you are with somebody that just retired and has this passion for photography, and then you have this guy that's here from Brazil who's been doing this quite literally for 20 years. It's the same feeling for both of them.
Right.
It's the same emotion. They get the same high. They get the same drive. And I eat that stuff up. I love passion.
Passion's great. And let's wrap it up with this. For people that are hindering themselves by not following their passion, what advice do you have for them, whether it's art, whether it's racing, whether it's anything? What would you say to them?
I would say that there is this word in the human language. It's called yes. I think yes is a word of power, but I also think it's a word of vulnerability. And I think a lot of times you have to face the things that make you weak. I think if you face your weaknesses, I think you can turn those things into strengths. And sometimes you just need the power of yes to make you vulnerable enough to be able to say, all right, I'm going to do this. And again, doing things for yourself, some people might think that's an ego play, and maybe it is. But I've done a lot in this world because I think I could, or I thought I could. And I proved that I figured I would.
That's great.
So it worked.
I like that.
All right,
John,
my friend.
Thank you for stopping by.
It's always a
We'll have to
pleasure.
do a third one next year.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll do one at a racetrack one day.
That'll be fun.
All right, man.
That'll be fun. I'll
Peace,
see ya.
man.
Thank
See
you,
ya.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.